to Discograffiti, the Music Obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Moby Grape Skip Spence, along with our special guest, Moby Grape and Skip Spence biographer Cam Cobb. This is part 2 of my discussion with Cam Cobb about the amazing life of Skip Spence, and it's episode 4 of our Grape Expectations Series, which features Cam talking about Skip's roller coaster ride through those early days of Moby Grape. And away we go then. So when last we saw our Skippy, he was ejected from the Jefferson airplane. And do you want to bring us up to speed, Cam?
So Skip had this career up to this point that was moving like a rocket. It's moving full steam, and he's constantly at the right place at the right time. He's at these historic moments where big things are happening, where we're talking about tectonic shifts in the music scene. And he exits the Jefferson airplane just a couple months before their debut album is about to come out. But as Skip's life has always been, he's excited and optimistic. Things are going to work out. Things are always going to work out.
He's in the band for, 9 months, 10 months?
Yeah, from early September 65 until April, May of 66. So Very short.
10 months. It's not a really long time. And he really made himself felt there. He's got a bunch of songs on that first record. He's got stuff that's going to come out on Early Flight that's incredible. Plus, he sweeps through later on, as we'll get to, when they're doing Surrealistic Pillow, and makes a big imprint on that record for the amount of time he spent on it.
Skip was ready, to be a front man. He was born ready to be a front man. And Matthew, who had good scouting ability, saw the talent that Skip had. And so there's this idea now we're going to form a band around Skip.
So step 1 was to approach a bassist friend of his from the South Bay who was in People. Robbie Levin was only 17 at the time, and he was already in People. And so he said no. And the interview you do with him is funny because it's tinged with regret, but it's almost like he dodged a bullet. So, but it's interesting that all these people, that's how great the Grape was. You dodge a bullet, but you're still, living a lifetime of regret because it was the Grape. So Matthew had heard about an LA-based drummer named Bob Newkirk. So Spence flew to LA to check out the musician and his current band, which was called Peter and the Wolves and included Peter Lewis. One of the members had left the group to join the Electric Prunes, and soon enough, Bob Newkirk also exited the group to join the Joel Scott Hill Trio, which was a San Diego band that had local chart success with a garage rock rendition of the Coasters' I'm a Hog for You. And that was basically the end of Peter and the Wolves. At that time, the band consisted of Joel Scott Hill, Bob Newkirk, Peter Lewis, and Bob Mosley. They had just very recently booked some studio time and cut a demo of Peter's song Fall on You, and Matthew was impressed by the group. He offered to fly the 4 guys up to San Francisco to rehearse with Skip, and feeling uncertain and, talk about, a really good sixth sense about people, Joel Scott Hill decides to stay behind in LA and to not even do the audition. The 3 guys went, but Skip and Bob didn't like Newkirk, so they started looking around for another drummer. The first one to be asked was Ron Armstrong, the drummer from Bob's band, The Misfits. He passes. Since they were unsigned, Moby Grape, they were speculative, and he, of course, later regrets the decision as well. I love this whole pileup of people who dodged a bullet, who regret not joining the band. And then, of course, the famous audition of Don and Jerry's, which was held at Matthew Katz's second floor office at 1725 Washington Street in San Francisco. And now, of course, they're a band. the way you lay it out in your book, it's a serpentine story, how these guys get together, and you follow the threads of these various tendrils in a really on top of it kind of way to help the reader understand what exactly happened there.
Yeah, it's, the point that you're making is also very interesting about these folks having this sense of regret in not joining this band that is going to have such a complicated history and have, so much nastiness, like this lawsuit that goes on and on for decades. And so I think the regret partly is Moby Grape, which we're going to get to later, though, they made an album that can stand beside any album in existence, and it can stand and rub shoulders, it can stand beside any Beatles album. It is that good. And I think that's the sense of regret is, everybody wants to be on a World Series winning team or win the Stanley Cup, and that's it.
So it's worth the headache.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of it. And they know that there's excitement, but there's also the same sense, because Robbie Levin was telling me that when he heard Bob Mosley, he's like, but I can't sing like this guy. This guy is amazing. So he's a different musician, but he also recognizes the talent that Bob Mosley had in the band. And so he doesn't think like he could have done what Bob Mosley did, but he wishes that he could have had this experience with Moby Grape where they were just firing on all cylinders, this band. And they knew it from, like, as you mentioned, like that first rehearsal. And Don has told me, I think Jerry told me too, like Don and Jerry both played it cool when they were saying goodbye, but they get back into the car afterwards and they're high-fiving each other. They know that there's something magic. And all the guys in the band have said that in interviews later on. Bob, Peter, and all of them have said they felt this kind of magic when they were rehearsing. It's also funny, to think that there's a photo of Matthew Katz in his office, and you can see him, and he's holding like a promotional material from Columbia Records, and it has a picture from the Moby Grape's first album cover. And behind Matthew is a pith helmet. And if you look later on in the Sweet Ride movie that Moby Grape was later in, Don's wearing that helmet in the movie. So it's funny to think that maybe that's the office where they did that rehearsal, that second floor office on Washington Street, where it all started for Moby Grape.
So obviously we have 3 living members of the Grape telling their side of the story. So during this run of time, when we're covering the Grape itself, we're only going to be going over material or aspects of the story that are not covered by the members of the story that add to the experience of, listening to the guys tell it as it was. So toward that end, one thing that was not covered with those guys is in late summer of 1966, the original 5 of the band who come together to be Moby Grape, they initially come together and practice over several afternoons in Skippy's Redwood Avenue Corte Madera house. And by that time, Skippy had the song Omaha written, and they had named the band. And this image of this giant window that brought in the August sun in August of 66, as these guys are sitting in a circle, getting to know one another, auditioning material, and there's 2 babies crawling around. I mean, it really stamps them in amber in a sense. It's so easy for me to imagine the birth of this band. All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Friday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.